You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. It would seem that the people at MVP had a year-end awards of their own. We know that at year's end, the periodicals and the promotional outfits, the powers that be, start handing out their own designations. I saw one hand out Fighter of the Year. Women's Fighter of the Year to Clarissa Shields. Sports Illustrated gave that designation to Michaela Mayer. MVP, at least among their own fighters, they've given that designation to Shernikica Johnson, Sugar Neeks, who recorded 2 fights under the banner last year. Why? We know that MVP went on a proverbial signing spree last year, picking up every noteworthy female fighter they could get their hands on, and Shernikica Johnson was one among them. What sets her apart from the other girls they decided to pick up? Well, her MVP debut went a lot better than, say, Naomi Valle, who lost in her MVP debut. So did Ebony Bridges a few days ago. And I would say that Shernikica, comparatively, made more of a splash in her MVP debut than a lot of other fighters recently signed to the banner. Made more of a splash than, say, Shannon Courtenay, Carolyn Dubois. Remember, they signed a lot of fighters, but I think what set Shernikica Johnson apart from them is she recorded a knockout in what was her MVP debut, and not only that, it was a knockout over a reigning champion in what was a unification match, arguably an undisputed title fight. All 4 alphabet titles were on the line when she forced a referee stoppage against Sharita Metcalf. Though whether or not that's enough to make her undisputed is subject to some debate, since Dina Thorsland, who is still unbeaten, is still this division's Ring Magazine and lineal champion. Still, Shernikica Johnson in her MVP debut did manage to make a splash and put forward a fan-friendly performance. She did it again on the undercard of Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul when she took on unbeaten Amanda Gaye, beat the crap out of her, overpowered her, once again putting forward a fan-friendly performance. And if you're a promotional outfit, that's really what you want. A fighter who, win or lose, can get out there and entertain. That fighter really is Shernikica Johnson, more than some others. Some others who also debuted under MVP and won their debuts, but in ho-hum fashion. Forgettable. Whereas Shernikica, leaning more into this aggressive style of fighting, is made for television, is made to watch, and frankly, it also helps that she's got a pleasing aesthetic. She's a good-looking broad. Whether the pear-shaped, blue-haired feminists like it or not, that makes her an easier fighter to market, easier to sell. And that's not saying that every fighter needs to look like Shernikica Johnson in order to get somewhere. It's not a requisite. That's just saying that she's accomplished, she's skillful, entertaining to watch, and it also helps that she's easy on the eyes, easy for MVP to market. So I see the strategy and the hierarchy of thought, but things only get more difficult for Shernikica Johnson from here. Holding all 4 alphabet titles at a given weight basically means you're bottlenecking everyone to you. Everyone in the WBC's rank standings, the WBAs, WBOs, and the IBFs, and not just them. Dina's on her ass, man. Dina wants that fight. She's signed to MVP too. If she makes it through her big comeback fight in Denmark in a few weeks' time, she's gonna want Shernikica right after that. Will MVP oblige her? Sort of a conflict of interest there if you're MVP. One fighter is a lot more marketable than the other, but the other stands a good chance of beating that fighter. And so, in that situation, do you make the fight? Dina's fighting Lila Furtado of Brazil. Very aggressive fighter, all the way up there at featherweight. And if she can beat Lila at featherweight, she can definitely handle Shernikica at bantam. I already had Dina beating Shernikica at bantam. The time off evened the scales a little bit, but now that we know she's having a tune-up fight, and if she wins it, next stop, Shernikica Johnson. Last year may have proven to be the biggest and most productive year of Shernikica Johnson's boxing career so far, but this one, things might get serious. Might get heavy. In men's super lightweight news, the IBF earlier today ordered Hitchens IBF champion to satisfy his mandatory challenger, Hitchens-Delgado. Eddie Hearn confirmed that the IBF has now ordered that fight, so you know how it goes. If Hitchens does not comply, he will forfeit the red and gold title. You have to wonder if he's going to go through with this, because since becoming IBF champion, he's become a very picky eater. I've seen Hitchens-Delgado in action, and I can't say that I'm impressed with that guy, overly enthusiastic about him. He's looked bang average in his last 2 or 3 fights, and in the last one, the very last one, I remember him getting dropped, sat on his back pocket. So it's hard to say how big a threat he actually is to the reigning IBF champion. Though in a very general sense, I would rather see somebody else holding that title than Hitchens, because for starters, I think he got a gift in the Gustavo Lemos fight. I felt that Lemos won that fight. And since becoming IBF champion, Hitchens ain't done a whole lot with that belt except defend it against George Kambosos, who he himself said isn't very good anyway. Remember when he was downplaying Devin Haney's 2 victories over that fighter for what was undisputed, so that he could after that face him at a higher weight. Then he achieved free agency last year and pissed the time away doing absolutely nothing, thinking that he could cut Eddie Hearn and Matchroom out of the picture to likely work with the Saudis independently. Last in action in June of last year, sitting out the rest of it, when he could have squeezed in a voluntary, perhaps pursued a unification match with one of the other champions at the weight. Did say he wants to fight Teofimo. Well, he didn't get him. I think the IBF title and the state at the weight would be a lot better if somebody else had the red and gold belt, and I'm not going to apologize for that, so that if Lindolfo, for all of his limitations, can take it from him, more power to him. I believe that Lindolfo is another one of these Zenfer Promotions fighters from south of the border that is co-promoted in America by Top Rank, but we all know that Top Rank is still in between broadcasters right now, which tells me this is likely going to be a Matchroom show, that if they do this fight, it'll be Matchroom doing it. Lindolfo is not the fighter you break the bank for. What does Lindolfo have to do to win? He has to go back to his Mexican roots, apply Mexican pressure. Be that gutting and gritty Mexican pressure fighter that's going to press the issue, press forward, crowd Richardson Hitchens in the pocket, and outwork him there. That's what he's got to do, like what Gustavo Lemos was doing. Gustavo is a very small guy. In spite of his modest stature, he was able to get inside on Richardson Hitchens quite often, whereas Lindolfo, he's a bit bigger. More size. Maybe more power, but that's what he has to do. He has to crash the pocket, get inside on Hitchens, and make him uncomfortable, outwork him there. I think we would all be better off if somebody else had the red belt. If you doubt my rationale, simple question. Do you think Hitchens is going to unify titles with Gary Antoine Russell? Do you think he's going to unify titles with Subriel Matias if Subriel wins this weekend? If the answer is no, then we don't need this guy, and the division don't need for him to have a belt. I would prefer that it go to somebody else. The virtue of the belt potentially going to a Lindolfo-Delgado is Lindolfo already doesn't make that much money. Won't come with all of the prima donna demands of a Richardson Hitchens, that if Lindolfo has the belt, we might actually get a unification match. Just imagine, Lindolfo-Delgado of Mexico, IBF champion, and Subriel Matias of Puerto Rico, WBC champion. Another entry into the Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry. It's more interesting than anything Hitchens has been doing with that belt. So now he's in the hot seat. The IBF have put him on the spot, and he's got to take care of this guy or surrender the belt to him. We'll see what he elects to do. In men's welterweight news, a cordial back and forth between the 2 reigning champions, Lewis Crocker and Devin Haney. Lewis said, "I'm willing to fight the biggest names. I'm not scared," on a potential Devin Haney fight, to which Devin responded, "I like this guy. Eddie doesn't want this for you, mate." Addressing Eddie Hearns' previous aversion to doing this fight, saying that unless Saudi Arabian financier Turki El Al Sheikh gets involved, the fight likely won't happen. Because who's gonna pay these guys what they want to get paid? I saw Boxing Beats and Rhymes' video on it, where he questioned Eddie Hearns' ability to put fights together. Has he become too reliant on Saudi involvement to get what's supposed to be his job done? I don't usually disagree with Beats' perspectives, but I sort of disagreed with that one because I don't think it's Eddie Hearn, per se, that's become too reliant on Saudi involvement. I think it's the fighters. I think it's Devin Haney. If what you're looking for every time you get out there now is a Saudi bag, you're the one who's become too reliant on them. Let's be honest, you know, as far as the fighters and their teams, it's always supposed to work out to where they make more money. So do you think Devin is pursuing this guy? Did he participate in a unification match for market value? I've said it plenty of times. Devin Haney has made very good money for a long time now, but he's overpaid. And there is such a thing as an overpaid fighter. If a fighter's making a purse that is in excess of what that fighter is good for, what the fight is worth, he's being overpaid. In the effort to draw American talent to their platform, when DAZN first debuted in America all those years ago, they were overpaying. And that's what Devin's purses have been based on, what DAZN was kicking out to bring him to their platform. So then you fast forward, and Top Rank ends up overpaying him, subsequently the Saudis end up overpaying, to where what he's getting is not an adequate reflection of his drawing power, so that when it's Eddie Hearn who has to try to put a fight together between him and one of his other fighters, for Eddie, it's not worth it. It's gonna cost too fucking much. It's not out of spite or not wanting to make a fight for not wanting to make a fight. It's not wanting to lose money. Not wanting to bleed red ink. But to get Devin Haney, and not just Devin, but Lewis too, the kind of money they want, well, Matchroom would have to. You think Devin wants the unified titles at welter for peanuts on the dollar? And Lewis, what do you think he's looking for a fight like that? For a fight that isn't a hot ticket. What do you think Haney versus Crocker draws in the United States? What do you think it draws in the United Kingdom? Would it be enough to cover the operational costs that would likely be astronomical, trying to get these guys the money they want? It's not that Eddie doesn't want that fight for Lewis, it's that Eddie wants to keep things within a budget, and the Haneys don't want that. They want to make off like bandits. They don't care about anybody's budget. They don't care about the operational costs for a show while they cosplay promoters that don't bear any of the risk when it comes to promotion. Devin's best bet to keep making the kind of money he wants to make is Turkey LL Sheik, because the other promoters are not going to overpay him. Not Matchroom, not Golden Boy, nope. Not Top Rank, not the PBC, not nobody. Nope. Devin is a free agent. Matchroom is under no obligation to make fights for him. So since you wanted to be free, go be free. And hopefully Turkey will find use for you. But if he doesn't, tough titty, bitch. It's not that Eddie Hearn or the promoters have become too reliant on Saudi Arabian money to make fights. It's that the fighters have become too reliant on that money. When yesterday's price is not today's price. Finally, in men's super middleweight news, you may have heard earlier this week that newly crowned WBA champion Armando Resendiz may end up facing former champion Jaime Munguia, as they are reportedly in negotiations for a potential super fight for later on in the year. A change to the story we initially heard a few weeks ago that Resendiz would potentially face Edgar Berlanga, who is still coming off that knockout loss to Hamza Shiraz. I never liked that fight for Edgar. I felt that Armando was going to steamroll him the same way that Hamza steamrolled him. This makes for a more competitive fight, even if a lot of people have lost faith in Jaime Munguia's pressure-fighting style and durability as a result of his shock upset loss to France's own Bruno Surace, who unexpectedly stopped him south of the border in what was dubbed the upset of the year in 2024. He avenged the loss last year in 2025, though not in spectacular fashion. He had to settle on a decision. He didn't stop Bruno like Bruno stopped him. So as a result of that, a lot of people have lost faith in Jaime Munguia's durability. All of the wars over the years may have finally caught up to him and his punch resistance, that they don't really like his chances against Armando, who's on the up and up. A recorded win over former champion Jarrett Hurd some fights ago. A recorded win over another former champion in Caleb Plant some fights later, and now he is set to fight yet another former champion in defense of his newly obtained WBA title. I like it. This is why I wanted Terence Crawford to retire and not to linger, to vacate the titles he holds so that the reset button could get hit in the super middleweight division so that new champions can get crowned and those crowns can be defended. The super middleweight division is one of the deeper divisions in all of boxing where there are any variety of good fights to make. This is one among them. Even if you don't like Jaime Munguia's chances, a fight between him and Armando in an all-Mexican shootout. We don't yet know who's at the helm of this promotion, but I'm going to assume that it's the PBC. When last I checked, north of the border, Jaime Munguia was with Top Rank, who we all know is still between broadcasters right now, whereas the PBC, for their part, are still doing shows here and there. It may be them at the helm of this promotion, and Jaime may be another top-ranked fighter that gets outsourced until they can sort themselves out. Armando is with the PBC. When last he fought, that's where we last saw him. What represents the new cycle of champions set to sprout as a result of Terence Crawford's retirement, abdicating the throne as this division's undisputed champion. Armando is a solid little fighter, fun to watch. Even if I don't see an undisputed champion in him, he's a pressure guy. What you see is what you get, and in many ways, so is Jaime. We're about to find out who's better with that base style. If Jaime can upset the apple cart for the newly crowned champion, he would easily become the most sought-after fight, or at least one of the most sought-after fights in this division. Jaime Munguia being a Mexican national, Armando is too. But Jaime's been around the block a while longer. He's a bit more well-known than Armando, to where if he can restore the boxing community's confidence in his fighting ability, he could go on to become the biggest name, if not one of the biggest names, at this weight. I believe that he is still being trained by Eddie Reynoso, and I've got mixed feelings about that. I've only seen Jaime fight with Eddie for one fight. He was a lot more measured than he usually is. Not as sudden, not as explosive, using his jab more and boxing more. And that was in the Bruno Sirache fight, likely to avoid getting knocked out like he did the first time. Measuring his approach. Is that how he's going to fight Armando? I don't know. We'll see.